All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Guided Podcast. And as I mentioned in my season 2 introduction, Catherine Ann, an intuitive astrologer who incorporates her background in tarot, channeling, and the healing arts in her uniquely guided approach to reading the messages in the stars, is here to kick us off with her monthly spotlight to discuss the energies of the new moon. So, Catherine, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you on because, as you know, I love astrology, but I don't get it. And you have this way of just making this information really practical and tangible. So, I am just going to turn this over to you to dive into these energies, and then we will come back together and get into a discussion about it. So, over to you.
Hey, thank you, Lindsay. I'm so excited to be here. This is so much fun. So we are going to just dive right in. So today we're going to be talking about the new moon that's coming up in Gemini. It will be on June 6th, and that will be happening at 5:37 a.m. Pacific time, 8:37 if you're in Eastern. You just adjust for your time zone, and that's going to tell you what time this new moon is coming exact. And what we're looking at today is when there's a new moon, that's when the moon is dark. So, we're looking out in the sky and there's no reflection from the sun, because actually, if you're looking at an astrological chart, the sun and the moon are connected. They're right by each other, so it's not able to reflect. So this moon is at 16 degrees of Gemini, so right in the middle of Gemini. And what's really interesting about this new moon is Venus is also at 16 degrees Gemini. So we have this energy of this new moon that is completely intertwined also with the energy of Venus. So Venus is love and harmony and beauty and romance, and it's the energy of attraction, so what we like to receive, and that is sitting right there with the sun and the moon. So all of this energy is happening in Gemini, and Venus in Gemini is fun and flirty and happy and kind of all the qualities of Gemini that you're going to think of, where Gemini is ruled by Mercury. It's a communicator, and Gemini likes to be expressive. It likes to, it's very quick-minded. And so Venus, in its energy of harmony and beauty, is blending that in the sign of Gemini of flirty and fun and social. Definitely a very social energy. This new moon energy, the new moon is always a planting time. So if you think about the moon cycle like, a gardening analogy, you're going to plant your seeds with the new moon. And then as the moon gets more and more light, it comes up to the full moon. That's when that's called the culminating energy, when that seed has bloomed. It's not time to harvest it, it's blooming. And then the moon keeps getting darker and going back to the new moon. And that's kind of like the harvesting and dying off cycle. So this is the lunar cycle that we're always going to be looking at. New moons are seed planting times. They're new beginnings. With new beginnings always comes endings. So there is an element of something is closing up so that you can start something new. And then when we look at the full moon, that's these seeds that you're planting coming to the light. So in this new moon, we're really looking at, what do we want to plant in the Gemini section of our life? So in the wheel of the chart, there's 12 different houses. And so for each individual chart, Gemini is going to represent a different area of your life. So for me, I have Gemini in the 6th house. That is going to be related to my health, my daily routine, my daily work environment, and even my pets. For you, Gemini in the 1st house, that's all about you. It's how you show up in the world, your body, just you, all of you. That's 1st house. So when we're talking about this new moon in Gemini, it's going to be in relationship to those aspects of your life in particular. And so we're going to be looking at this fun, flirty, harmonious energy involved with Venus. But we're also thinking about seeds are planted in the dark, right? So when we plant a seed, it's going down into the dirt. There's no light, just like there's no light in the new moon. So this is not something that we're manifesting immediately. This is something we're planting for a growth cycle. This new moon in particular has an aspect to Saturn that is a little challenging. So Saturn is the planet of time. It's the planet of boundaries, restrictions, discipline, determination. And it's in hard aspect. It's in square to this Sun, Moon, and Venus little bundle that we have in Gemini. So what that means is that even though we're going to be planting these seeds and we're doing it in an energy that's energetic and fun and exciting and yay, summer's coming, we're so excited. I want this, I want that. I'm going to start this new thing with my life. We just came off of some really big energies in the last couple months of it's time to go for it. We have North Node in Aries, Mars has moved into Aries. We have a lot of let's go for it. And what do I want energy that has happened in the last couple months. And so now we're excited to plant some seeds to make some things happen. But with this square to Gemini, the square to Saturn, it's going to take a little bit longer. It's probably going to be something that's going to take more hard work, a little bit more determination, in order to bring these new ideas into fruition. So if we look at the sign of Gemini in the tarot, it can be represented by both the Magician and the Lovers. And both of those cards are really great for the energy of this new moon because Venus, the sign of love, really brings in that card of the Lovers. But it's also called the Lovers because that is a card of duality, right? So it has, if you're familiar with the image of the Lovers, it has the two figures. It's not a singular energy. And neither is Gemini. Gemini is a double body sign. It's not a singular energy. And so that's part of why the Lovers really represents Gemini, but also the Magician. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about more. The Magician is this image of a magician with all the elements, earth, fire, water, and air, and ready to manifest. So the Magician is quite a manifester, which is great. You're going to plant your seeds for manifestation. But because of this square to the square to Saturn, Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, and Mercury is being told to slow down. So this fast, quick-witted, go, go, go is being told, have you considered all the factors? Have you thought about the form and structure that these manifestations are going to come into? Right? It's not this willy-nilly. And Saturn has been transiting Pisces for a while now. Pisces is a real connection to spirit. And we've been kind of under what we want to call like marathon training of this. How do we bring form to our spiritual practice? Do we have a daily meditation? Are we connecting in with some new modality that brings us into that connection with spirit? Are we working to develop our intuition? All of those elements of Pisces that are kind of like floaty and spiritual, Saturn's there saying, put form around it. It needs a container so that you're not just floating away into the ethers. It's grounding it back into this practical daily expression. So that's also what's going to be happening with these new ideas that we've planted. What's the container that needs to be set up? So an example might be, for me, because this is about health and routine, so maybe I'm going to be planting some new seeds about I want to change my health practices. I'm going to get maybe a new exercise routine, or I don't know, go on a cleanse, try a new diet like vegetarian or whatever, right? Some new health routine. And Saturn is going to say step by step. It's probably not going to be super easy. You're going to have to be determined. You're going to have to be disciplined. As fast as that Gemini energy would love for it to flow, you're going to have to rein it in and give it a container. So maybe you're going to have to think about how to carve out time in your life to food prep and grocery shop and do those things that are the discipline structure to help that new seed grow.
So, can I ask you a question about that too, in terms of another example? As you are talking about the intersection of both the spiritual and this container, I think a lot of the guidance that I've been getting recently is around new ways of thinking around my career and ways that I need to be focusing in a positive, affirming kind of way that does look like mantras or does look like, affirmations that feel a little bit airy fairy to me, but it's around what I want to create in my business. And Spirit has been asking me to create more routine and structure each and every day around this focus. And so would that be an example of the intersection of those two?
It's a perfect example because for you with the Gemini rising, that means that Saturn is in your 10th house. Your 10th house rules career. So what's happening right now is Saturn going through Pisces is doing exactly what you just said. In your career sector, I need to create some discipline and routine around the spiritual connection to work, right? Not working in spirituality, but how do I bring spirit in to support on a regular, consistent basis? Saturn really likes the word commitment, right? So I'm making a commitment to my spiritual practice around career. And then this new moon in Gemini, Gemini is all about ideas, right? It's the thinking, it's the communicator. And so you really, I would expect, are buzzing with new ideas and new things that you want to bring forth that represent you. And how do you bring that out? And this square to Saturn is saying, with the disciplined spiritual routine in your workspace.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful.
So another element of this moon that I wanted to talk about is at the same time, we have Jupiter trining Pluto. So Jupiter has just spent about a year or so in Taurus. Many of you may have heard of the big Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. There was all these big things happening with Jupiter. And now, as of the end of May, it's transitioned into Gemini, and it will be there for about a year. Jupiter does about a year in each sign. So Jupiter doesn't love Gemini because Jupiter is the planet that rules like philosophy and wisdom and the great teacher. And Gemini is the rational intellect learner. The Mercury wants to express and be active, where Jupiter wants to ruminate a little bit more about the philosophy of the situation. So it's not super comfortable in Gemini, nothing terrible. It's just a different approach to life. And so that's an aspect that's also involved in this new moon. The beautiful thing is it's trining Pluto. And some people, when they hear Pluto, are like, uh-oh, Pluto, death and rebirth, transformation, it's big stuff. And it's not that that's not accurate. It's just that trines are harmonious. This is a beautiful flow between Jupiter and Pluto. And what this is offering is an opportunity. If you're willing to dig deep, Pluto, if you're willing to go inward and reflect, especially because Pluto is retrograde, so that's going internal, doing all the re-words, just like you would think of a Mercury retrograde. It's all the re-words, reflection, revise. So really going internal and digging deep, what you're going to find in a trine to Jupiter is that treasure. So Jupiter is the treasure. So, what is your great resource? What is your great potential that if you're willing to go and dig deep and be reflective and say, yes, I'm willing to transform those things that need to be transformed, I'm going to discover that I actually have the resources and the potential to bring to light the seeds I'm planting in this full moon. So this Jupiter Pluto trine, it's slower moving. It's going to be with us for a little bit more because they're actually moving in two different directions. So by the end of June, it's going to be a lot more separated. But at least for the first few weeks after this new moon, great opportunity to say, what do I need to shift? What do I need to internally look at? Those shadows that are going to impede your ability to manifest the seed you're planting. So it's actually a supportive energy, even though for some going into the shadow may not mean their favorite thing.
Yeah, I think that's so helpful because as I think about, new moons and the cycles, one of the things I want to clarify for the audience too, because I don't actually know the answer to this. We always think about, using and leveraging these energies for the actual lunar cycle. But when we talk about planting these seeds, and you're saying the energies are really speaking to something that is going to require determination and more persistence, that makes me feel like things are going to happen over a longer period of time. So, how do we reconcile like seeds that get planted that we want to happen and see bloom by the end of the moon cycle, right? Versus how long does it actually take for these seeds to really blossom?
Right. And I'm going to say that it's going to depend on the moon cycle because the other aspects that are happening, right? So this one has this aspect to Saturn. It's going to slow it down. There's kind of like no way around needing patience because of this hard aspect to Saturn. If it didn't have that, I think we'd be talking about a different type of energy. So in the general sense, it's always going to depend on, does it have these flowing energies or does it have these energies that slow it down in regards to the other planets? And there are like cycles within cycles within cycles when you're talking about astrology. So yes, we have the monthly lunar cycle, right? We're just going new moon, full moon, new moon, full moon. And seeds that are planted in the new moon do not come to fruition by the next full moon because these cycles are actually much longer. So you're having a new moon in Gemini. When are you hitting the full moon in Gemini? And then when are you coming back again to the next new moon in Gemini? Because over the course of that time is how it's going to take the full lunar cycle. We're going to be going from planting the seeds to now they're sprouting to now they've fully come to the light. And all, and even once they fully come to light, that doesn't always mean it's ready to harvest, right? I see it. And it also may mean, oh, things have come to light that I didn't realize that now I need to make adjustments on. And then we keep going, right? So that cycle is really more of like a 2-year cycle. So it depends on what I want to say, like, again, like layer upon layer and layer.
I think that's really no, that's really helpful, especially when you don't really understand astrology. Like that's really helpful because I think so much is focused on these shorter cycles and the energies of the full moon versus the new moon. But then I'm always like, but where are we circling back to this particular energy, which to me fuels my question of what's the best way to set intentions to leverage the energies of this particular moon?
So I think the best way to set intention is once well, for any new moon, right? This is not a 2-week manifestation, but that's just um, not the flow, right? So any new moon, you know, you're planting seeds that are going to develop over time. I always like to think, okay, so 6 months later, we're going to hit the full moon. Now what? So the moon is full in this right now we have the sun in Gemini and the moon in Gemini. So when we're going to look for the full moon in Gemini, the moon will be in Gemini, but the sun will be in Sagittarius opposite that. So that's in November, December season, right? So you're going to look for some things coming to light, coming to some sort of culmination, not completion of the whole cycle, but some sort of coming to light in 6 months. And you really, I feel like you really can see that. Some other things to think about with this too are how, when you're looking at how does it work in your own chart, right? Because everything is going to have to do with what's going on in your own chart. And there's bigger cycles. And, you know, what, for example, Venus might represent in your chart is going to be different than what it represents in my chart. And since this moon is in relation to Venus, it's going to have some interplay with that natal promise of what Venus meant in your chart. So that's kind of like a deeper level if you were going to go to a really more specific level of like the timing and how it's going to show up. But the basics, I would say we're looking, I think, minimum 6 months up to 2 years, depending on all the other aspects.
In your chart. Yeah. And we will include all of your information in the show notes so that if people want that specific information, they can reach out to you so that they can do readings with you. The thing, it's funny, I want to bring up because I keep getting flashed to this particular image of something I just did. And then I think you're going to tell me how it's related to these moon cycles. But what I love about the imagery you're offering is it's so related to gardening. And Catherine and I are both into gardening. And I just planted my very first vegetable garden. And, you know, we went out and we got all of the plants and we had to plot out and plan, you know, where all the different vegetables were going and what veggies were going to be planted with what veggies don't get along well and don't play well in the sand together. And so, right, I had to plan all of this out. And then, of course, I plant all of these vegetables. And then the next day I watch a video because, of course, not only am I new to gardening, but I'm new to gardening in Arizona. So I watch a YouTube video from a local garden shop here that talks about, oh, make sure when you plant these veggies that you're putting these water crystals underneath the roots because in June, when it's scorchingly hot and dry in Arizona, it's going to help provide some water reserves for these plants. So now, of course, I want to go back. I want to dig up all the plants that I just planted and I want to put these aqua crystals in the thing, right? And so, of course, I looked at the weather forecast after I planted and only ordered frost cloth after I planted all of these things. So I feel like, based on what you said, this is a great example of the not planning it all out and not creating the container. So am I on the right track there? Is that what the opposite might look like? If like what Saturn is kind of calling for us to put structure to?
Well, I think for this moon in particular, I actually think for the moon that you did the planting on, it was so fertile. You're probably okay. It's a really, really, like it wants to grow. So you're probably okay. But yeah, I think for this Gemini new moon, yeah, well, and what I would say too is that it's not necessarily that you need to put the structure in now as you're planting the seeds. It's more the understanding that this Gemini is an air sign. It wants to like flow, right? This is not that grounded earth. But Saturn is going to tell you that whatever you planted, it's not an air plant. It's not going to just grow by you loving it floating around. So I think the container is going to come step by step. And it's really about the commitment to creating that container that is going to matter for those seeds, right?
Yeah.
So,
And so
um,
Saturn holds us responsible too, right? So what I'm hearing you say, it's like the intentions that we set and how we can really leverage this is like think of the intentions almost as what commitments do we want to make to ourselves? And as we move through this moon cycle and really leverage the energies, what Saturn, who is also, right, responsibility, right? Taking responsibility, I always think of with Saturn, what do we need to take responsibility for to hold that commitment? What are the blocks or the fears or the things that basically come up to throw these roadblocks in our path that we also need to take responsibility for unearthing, looking at that shadow that you were speaking to, right? And really identifying what is wanting to be seen, what is needing to be healed so that we can stay true to the commitment. Does that reflect?
yes, absolutely. And I think that knowing that this is a new moon right there with this fun, flirty Venus, it makes me think about like if you're at a party and it's like, yeah, this is so much fun. But maybe you make a connection with somebody, unless you actually do the steps afterwards to pursue that connection and actually develop a relationship with that person or that situation, it's a one-off. So that's kind of the energy of this new moon where it's like, yeah, it's going to be awesome and you're going to be excited and you're going to have all these great ideas and keep at it.
Right. So it's not a one and done energy. It's the one and done is an example of what we need to keep committing to, keep stepping out into that energy, keep committing to showing up in that particular area of where you're setting these intentions.
And then I also think, I like to do crystal grids for the new moon ceremonies. And part of that, doing a crystal grid, is having a focus for your intention. So you're, being able to see a visual representation of with the crystals or the shape or the background of kind of that energy that you're trying to implant. But going back to that intention, what is it that it's the attention to your intention, right? That matters. And so having that something that's going to keep drawing you back to those intentions, as opposed to, I did the new moon ceremony.
Right.
Yeah,
So yeah, all that's is why they say, altars alter, right? But it's really because it's anchoring our focus and bringing us back to that reminder of our intentions.
right. And really, in the couple weeks after, with this beautiful Jupiter Pluto trine, if you take that time to sit with those intentions and uncover what is maybe in your subconscious around those intentions that's ready to be released and healed, that's where you're really going to find that treasure trove of resources or potential to help. They just get flash me to that image of the crystals, like that's the water crystals, right? Like that's those resources that can be pulled upon for, because you've basically unearthed them.
Yeah. I just prefer to have done that in the right order, but I'm like the queen of
Live and learn.
making more work for myself. Yeah, right?
Yep.
Yeah. But how we do one thing is how we do everything. What is it? Like ready, fire, aim. I think that's yeah. That's the example there.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Amazing.
It's interesting, especially with all this Gemini energy. So we have Jupiter, Mercury, Sun, Moon, Venus, all in Gemini. It's it's excitable. It's active and moving and fast. So that's fun after some of the stuff we've been through over the last few months, with the eclipses and some other intensities. But so I would say enjoy and have fun and be innovative and inventive with what you're doing. Gemini loves invention It wants to be flexible and changeable. So all of that type of energy is really beautiful to bring in to these intentions, right? If you want to change something, if you want to, especially if, I have a lot of fixed energy. If you're a person like me that I may not be afraid of change, but it's like moving the iceberg sometimes. This Gemini energy is going to say, let's do it. So, I would say it's totally okay to be whimsical with the intentions you want to set, and bring in that, Venusian harmony and beauty. And then just know that it's going to take a commitment to really wanting to bring that about.
Yeah. So is it safe to say, as we wrap this up and leave people with maybe a question to ponder regarding a catalyst that could help them set intentions, would it be safe to say that it's kind of a dreamy energy in terms of like that? To me, whimsy is like I
Wouldn't say dreamy. I
no.
wouldn't say dreamy. I would say more inventive.
Okay.
So dreamy has this
Is
more,
like Piscean.
yeah, like
Okay.
flowy. Whereas Gemini is more mental. So it's like quick thinking. And so innovation, invention, new, exciting, as opposed to like the whoosh that dreamy feels like to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say when you get those sparks of ideas, um, that's something that maybe you want to see through.
So, right. So, paying attention to our ideas, innovations, thoughts, and seeing which ones of those we may want to set intentions around to really bring commitment to for a longer term manifestation.
Yeah.
Awesome. This is super helpful. I'm so excited too, because something you said really helps me think about, even with breath work, right? Like we really use breath work to release things that are in the way of, right, moving us forward, emotions, any stuckness, tension, things we might be holding on to. And I love that this idea of this moon and these energies and the commitment, right? Like that might bring up things for people to ponder as they look to leverage the energies for releasing. So whether that's in breathwork circle with me, or whether that's in any other kind of breathwork you're doing with others or independently, that might be an effective way to use these energies.
Yeah, definitely. And then something else that just came in was that Gemini is the sign of the twins. So a favorite astrologer that I follow, Anne Ortley, talks about how the Gemini energy, Geminis do things twice. So thinking about how this is Pluto retrograde and we're revisiting things, this may be the second time around that you're trying to plant these seeds. And if it is, don't be discouraged. This is just try two. Or maybe there will be a try to in the future for something, but Gemini does things twice. So there's a doubling up.
I know that feeling. I can really relate to that. This like idea of where it feels like I'm swinging and missing and then circling back again and being like, okay, I'm still failing forward. It's not really failure if we're moving forward, right? But it's kind of looking at those areas of where we can swing again, right?
Yep. Yep, exactly. So, and then also depending on where it shows up in your chart, where you hold or where Gemini, holds that house, that's going to in particular be the area maybe that you do things twice,
Yeah.
right?
So is there an easy way for people to identify what house Gemini with related to this moon? They can obviously reach out to you for support. And are there other ways or resources that can help people identify where this will hit them?
So anytime you're going to pull up a chart for astrology, it's all going to be, the houses are always based on your rising sign. So there are various house systems. I use the whole house system. Placidus is another really common one, but typically if somebody's doing a horoscope, like on YouTube or globally, they're using whole sign because it just is easier. So you can go into any free platform, astro.com, AstroSeek. There's a bazillion free platforms. You enter in your date of birth, your time, and your location. So the time is what's so important for the houses because the time generates your rising sign, and your rising sign is what then starts house one. So then you go around the houses. So if you don't know your time of birth, there are astrologers that do rectifications and then can help you with that. I do not. But that is the easiest way to figure out what house this is showing up for.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that and for all of this information. And again, we will include all of Catherine's information in the show notes if you want to reach out to her for a more detailed astrological report. And we will look forward to connecting with Catherine again for the discussion around the full moon energies in June. So until then, we will see you all next time.
Thank you.